Hello, my guitar playing friends. We're going to cover quite a few things in this lesson, and our song is going to be This Land Is Your Land by Woody Guthrie. Of course, this is an American classic, but being from Oklahoma, it has a special place in my heart since Woody Guthrie, we claim him. He was born here. And in fact, there's still a Woody Guthrie Festival in Okemah, Oklahoma every year. So this great classic song, This Land Is Your Land, is a great song to work on 3 chords that we're going to learn and use. We already covered chords previously, so you might review that and look at your chord sheet. The 3 chords we're going to use are C, G, and D7. So let's tackle probably the most complicated one first, which is G. Why is it complicated? Because there are a few ways we can do it. If you are feeling like you want to keep it simple right now, I think that's a great idea. You can simply play half the chord. Put your 3rd finger on the note G, which is the 3rd fret on your 1st string, and there's more to the chord up here, but we can just simply ignore those strings. I'm going to use our pick here. You can use your thumb if you want, but I do encourage some picking. And you can simply strum the higher strings of the guitar. And that's going to be great. That'll keep things a little more simple for you. Now, if you want to do the full G chord, there's a few ways to do it, but the way we're going to do it here is we're going to keep this one down, and we're going to add our 1st finger on the 5th string, 2nd fret, and our 2nd finger on the 3rd fret down on the 6th string. Most of the time when people play this chord, they think, I'll never be able to do this. My 3rd finger feels so weird stretched down against my hand. And then usually within just a few days, it feels pretty natural. That's usually what happens. And then this way you can strum the entire guitar. Now I am actually not going to use this fingering in this song. I am going to switch my fingers around, and I'll show you why in a minute. I am going to, instead of using my 1st and 2nd finger here, I'm going to use my 2nd and my 3rd finger here, and I'm going to use my pinky down here. Now, you're probably going to hate this position at first. A lot of guitar players just have people learn this right off the bat this way, because it is a handy way to do G. Again, I'll show you why in a minute. But you can do it either way, but I'll show you that there is a bit of an advantage to doing it this way in this song. Everything's the same. I'm just using different fingers. Now there's another way we'll do G later where we even have these 2 down, but we don't need that right now. But if you already know G and you play it like that, to where you have your 3rd fret down on your 1st and 2nd strings, that'll work great too in the song. Just has a slightly different sound. So here's our G chord, and I've given you some options. The next chord that we're going to cover is our C chord. Now why do I like this version of G in this song? Because of this relationship between the 2nd and the 3rd finger. For C chord, I can simply take them down a string, put my 1st finger down here, and I have a full C chord. There are some different ways that people play C chord. Sometimes they'll pop this 3rd finger up to the 6th string and put their pinky where that one was and play it that way. I just taught a song yesterday where the guitar player did it that way. If you do it that way, that's great, but generally we're just going to play it this way. And it's okay to hit your 6th string a little bit, although it's X'd out usually in chord blocks, but you don't want to hit it too much. Because this is a C chord, we typically want to get a C note, which our 3rd finger is playing, as our lowest note in the chord. But if you hit it a little bit, don't worry too much about it, it's fine. And then our other chord we're going to do is D7. We played this chord just a moment ago, or I showed it to you a moment ago. You may be watching the videos differently in the context of our Prelude in G, our fingerstyle song, because this position was in that song. We were just hitting the higher 4 strings, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings of the guitar here. It will not sound good if you hit the low E string, because that note is not in the chord. It just has a confused, murky sound to it, so we don't want to do that. So our chords are G. Again, I'm going to do it this way, but you can do it either way. And I like doing it this way because then it's easy for me to get to the C chord and back. But again, this is a more dramatic change, but if you can do it, that's fine. When I first started playing guitar, I always did this. And then later on, I finally got used to this G position, and I'm very glad I did. But it takes a little work to get used to that. And then our D7 position. The way we were going to strum this, you can see in the music, is I kind of wrote to just simply do 2 down strums for now in every measure. So we're going to try the song that way. And then I'm going to show you a couple of alternate ways that you can strum the song so that you can try it multiple ways. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to sing and play the song for you. The song has what we call some pickup notes, meaning we're going to sing a few notes before the rhythm of the song really kicks into gear. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. You might want to pause the video and just try strumming between those chords a little bit. It takes a lot of practice to be able to switch between them without stopping your pick. So if you're thinking, I can't do that, of course not yet, but it's going to take a little while to get used to that. Like it might take you a day, it might take you a few weeks to get really comfortable switching between. But remember that you can also use that simple G chord if that helps. I forgot to mention that on the C chord, you could do the same thing. You could just play the top part of the C chord for now. And that's fine, again, as long as you don't hit these lower strings, or else it gets kind of murky. So you can kind of, some people call this cheating. It's not cheating. I mean, it's stair-stepping your way up to being able to do the full thing. So if you want to do G chord and the simple, call it simple G and simple C, that's great. There's really no substitution for the full 100% professional D7 here. So you're going to have to do that. Luckily, when we switch between the chords, well, it just depends. If you're playing the C first, then you can keep it in place and add it to the D7, but sometimes that works out. Sometimes you're coming to that D7 from the G though, so it doesn't really matter. So take your time, play it a couple of different ways. Use those simple C, simple Gs if you need to, the D7. Try the full versions of the G and the C chord. This is a great song to practice. You may know the song, so you can even start to work on your singing if that's something you're interested in. We're not going to cover it now, but the notes are also written in. If you wanted to look over at our natural scale and kind of review where those notes are, you can pluck through the tune if you want to. Great way to practice your picking and also very satisfying. But what I want to do for the next minute or two is go over a couple of alternate ways that you can strum in this song. Say you're getting pretty good at this kind of strumming. Well, one thing you could do if you wanted to, if you want a little more upbeat version of this song, is you could use our strum pattern number 4 that we learned back in the basics section. What would that sound like? This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island. So that has a really upbeat kind of feel to it, which works great. You get everybody clapping their hands when you play it that way. So you can certainly do it that way. Another way that I like to do it is, instead of playing 2 full strums, instead of one full strum, I will replace that with plucking the bass note, which is just another word for the lowest note that we're supposed to play in the chord, which is this 5th string note here in C. I'm going to pluck that, and then the upper half of the chord. So you're playing the bass note, and then you could hit the bass note again, but I always think of it as kind of a low, higher thing, and you kind of get this pattern. You can see I'm actually alternating my bass notes here. You don't have to do that. You could just stay on the same note too. Then we go to G chord. Note that I'm doing one boom bra or boom chuck for every time that we were just strumming a full chord. What does that sound like when you put it together? This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island. So that really fits the feel of the song, I think, and you might agree with me. One more little thing about strumming is when you're doing that kind of boom chuck, we might call it strum pattern, which works great for country music, folk music, stuff like that. You have another possibility of doing something kind of cool. You know how I was alternating my bass notes at first? I actually didn't mean to. I just did it on accident and decided to roll with it. But you play your bass note, the upper part of the chord, and then maybe I come up to where my second finger is playing the fourth string. We're going to cover this more in depth later, but maybe I lift up my finger, play it, and then pop it back down. This is called a hammer-on. We'll go over it a little more in depth on another video where we'll learn hammer-ons and pull-offs. But what does that do? Same thing on G. Even D. Missed it. So you get the idea. What does that sound like? This land is your land. This land is my land. From California. You know, so like that. So it just sounds really cool. In fact, sometimes I'll maybe play the song, sing it, and then maybe I'll just take a time through it where I'm not singing or anything and I'm just playing this great. Which just sounds fantastic for a kind of a country and folk way of playing. So there's a few different ways to play This Land Is Your Land. I would absolutely start with the simple version. Just changing between the chords takes a long time to get used to. Just practice moving between the two of them over and over and over again. Use those simple chords if you need to for G and C, and then develop the fuller chords, whichever fingering you decide to go with. And then some of these other alternate picking patterns you can do as you get more comfortable with time.